Great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you to David Kelly and Con Holohan for inviting me here to speak with you today. My name is Claire Healy. I'm a creative director and cultural strategist, specialising in what are known as narrative environments. Alongside my professional practice, I currently teach narrative environments at the National College of Art and Design in Dublin and on the MA Narrative Environments course at Central St Martin's in London. I also volunteer as a director on the board of the Irish Architecture Foundation. So, what exactly is a narrative environment? Put simply, narrative environments are spaces that tell stories. They are narrative journeys, embodied experiences that unfold across space and time. One of the things that interests me about narrative environments is how they operate across multiple scales, from a standalone installation to a series of spaces such as a gallery, to a building, an urban quarter, and beyond, right up to the planetary scale. So today I'll show you how narrative can be applied to space across scales. First, a little about my background. So I studied architecture at Central St Martin's in London before going on to study an MA in narrative environments there. So my training is in spatial practices within an art and design school context. And in my practice, I work across design, creative direction, curation, and strategy. I thought I'd show you a snapshot of some of the projects I've worked on over the past 15 years or so to give you a sense of the kinds of projects that fall in this field. One of the things I love about working in narrative environments is that every project is completely different, each involving a new story, site, and audience, and each providing an opportunity to explore different creative approaches, technologies, and contexts. Work across the full design process, from early strategy through to on-site delivery, and across a wide range of different environments. My work spans immersive theatre, festivals and events, pop-up gardens, brand experiences, visitor centres, exhibitions, museums, and architectural and urban interventions. I've also worked on brand design and cultural strategies, as well as in speculative futures, exploring themes such as the future of scent, work, retail, and transport, all in relation to narrative environments. For the years, I've worked with incredible clients, studios, and collaborators from many different disciplines, including architects, developers, curators, artists, performers, photographers, film and interactive media creators, and creative technologists. Today, I work in a variety of ways. Sometimes I collaborate with creative studios to lead projects. Sometimes I provide creative leadership and assemble teams for companies, institutions, and organizations who want to create work in this space. And I also take commissions through my own practice, Fido, which I run with fellow designer and strategist Bethany Shepherd. What draws me to a project is the nature of the story itself, and whether it feels like a story worth telling. Work often involves transmedia storytelling, where narratives unfold across physical, digital, and hybrid environments. Particularly interested in how story can permeate different media to build immersive story worlds. And I love finding clever ways to do this that surprise and excite audiences. Ultimately, though, what motivates me to do this work is a belief in the power of immersive storytelling through embodied experience to create meaningful cultural and societal impact. I'd like to show you a short video of a project I worked on with the Experience Design Studio event to give you a flavour of the interdisciplinary nature of creating narrative environments. It's an internationally touring experience called Meet Vincent van Gogh, and the client was the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam. One of the key challenges of this project was that there were no actual artworks within it. So we needed to tell the story experientially, using set works, props, programmed lighting, projection, and interactive media. This video will demonstrate how a story can be told across time and space using a variety of different methods.
It's in my memory of everything we have loved. I should die. But we then believe. To reach the point where people say that man feels deeply.
So for this masterclass today, I'm going to take you through a few examples of past projects in more detail, showing how I've used narrative theory and design through various media to craft experiences across scale. First, I'd like to introduce you to some principles of narrative environments. At the very beginning of a project, it's useful to ask these three questions. Who are the audiences and stakeholders? Where will the experience take place? And what is the story? Narrative environments often involve these three elements: people, place, and story. This framework was developed by Tricia Austin, founder of MA Narrative Environments at Central St. Martin's, where the term narrative environments was first coined. It shows how narrative environments are networked. The tripartite network is made up of narrative, people, and environment, or people, place, and story, as I was saying before. In the top right corner, you'll see her book, where this is introduced for anyone interested in reading more about this. Now we'll jump into some examples of narrative environments operating across these different scales, starting with a recent project that operates at the scale of an installation. The project is called Opening Ceremony, Wembley's Parade of the Giants. So my role on the project was creative project director for Central St. Martin's, working with the innovation team on behalf of MA Narrative Environments. The brief was to lead a graduate team of multidisciplinary creatives to design an interactive mural celebrating the heritage of Wembley Park ahead of the Oasis concerts last year for locals and visitors to the London Designer Outlet. And our client was London Designer Outlet in Wembley, which is owned by the developer Quintain. The multidisciplinary graduate team consisted of 3 recent graduates of MA Narrative Environments, bringing their own skills to the project. Here's a concept statement. So in order to represent the multiple facets of Wembley Park, the team created a series of giants, each a cultural emblem, standing for a particular facet of Wembley's cultural identity. There was the Olympian, representing the 14th Olympiad, hosted in Wembley Stadium in 1948, just after World War II ended. Footballer, representing Wembley Stadium as the home of the England football team. Railman, representing Wembley Park Station and its significance in the history of transport. Superfan, representing iconic music events in Wembley Stadium. The creative, representing film and entertainment within Wembley as home to important production venues and filming locations. The performer, representing the theatrical presence that exists and flourishes there. The architect, representing builders, craftsmen, makers, artisans, and all who built at Wembley. And finally, the activist, representing people power and the community solidarity that has strengthened the core of Wembley's heritage. So the mural is installed and located beside an entrance. If you approach from this side, you see 2 giants with parade flags welcoming you to London Designer Outlet with the universal gesture of the wave, which works well to break through language barriers. So this was important to the client, as many of the visitors to London Designer Outlet speak languages other than English. Then as visitors walk along the mural into the site, they encounter each of the giants one by one. They may also approach the mural from the far side as they exit, in which case the giants on the corner's waves could be interpreted as a goodbye, So the mural can be read both ways, which makes it a palindromic story or reversible story. The Giants effectively provided an accessible way in for a diverse, multi-generational and multilingual audience, and also provided a gateway into further content that can be accessed by scanning the QR codes and animating the mural using augmented reality. This method of using different characters linked to different types of narrative content tailored the experience towards the different interests of the audience. So if you like music, you can find out more about the musical heritage by scanning the superfan and so on. Aside from a digital activation at the mural, there was also built-in potential to unlock content and have the Giants appear at different places within the wider site, alongside different retail offerings and so on. So we considered strategic brand pairings for each Giant to sit alongside, based on which brands were on site, making a connection between the brands as well and the characters. A series of postcards were created using the mural artwork to spread the story of the mural off-site. This is Kule, the illustrator, holding one. And this is the full graduate team, Kule, Heihan, and Claudia. We were really lucky to have a wonderful group of people on both the creative team and the client side. And it was a very enjoyable project to work on because of that. The marketing team, you can see, we're really excited by the narrative potential of the concept and how it could evolve, revealing layers of the story over time. This project shows how embedding narrative in the creative process can create richer outcomes, adding value for the client, the built environment, whilst also creating a shared moment of civic pride. The next project is one that my studio, Fido worked on with Science Gallery London. We led the creative marketing campaign and 2D and 3D design for the exhibition Vital Signs, an interactive temporary exhibition focused on planetary sensing and how all beings' actions are connected, whether we realize it or otherwise, from the microscopic all the way to the planetary. This was our team and the skills involved in putting it together from a creative perspective. As an aside, in terms of spatial storytelling, with Science Gallery exhibitions, the task is always to create an ambient narrative that expresses the theme of the show that is viewed across the space, providing a context for the art installations to be experienced within. These artworks then explore the theme of the show through different perspectives. They are nested stories. In designing narrative environments, we often use story shapes. They're devices that organize story in space. Story shape on screen is known as the lily pad. It's useful to explain the visitor experience for Science Gallery shows generally. So through the metaphor of the lily pad, the visitor becomes a frog, jumping from one lily pad to another, experiencing different stories as they explore the exhibits. Each lily pad is part of one wider theme, which is the rest of the plant below, holding all the stories together. Theoretically, any number of these stories or lily pads can be experienced in any order, and the overall theme of the exhibition or show or whatever it is still will come across. This is the story shape we used when Fido led the design for Bias, the 50th and final exhibition at Science Gallery Dublin in 2021. Visitors could explore the artworks in any order, skip some, and still understand the overall theme of the exhibition. It's good to note that certain narrative formats and spaces lend themselves to particular story shapes. And there are many different story shapes to draw from, ranging from linear to there and back, to the inner sanctum, to hub and spokes, and so on. And these can be used as spatial organizers of story. I thought I'd show you the lily pad today to introduce this concept of story shapes, and you can dig deeper if you're interested in learning more. Further note on working with an ambient narrative, where the story is mainly communicated through atmosphere. The design approach can sometimes feel a little bit like a one-liner. In the case of Bias, it was the idea that the whole gallery is bathed in seamless chroma key green, actually quite like this, across walls, floors, and setworks, highlighting the fact that everything we experience is a construct, even the gallery itself. And then for Vital Signs, instead, we use the medium of heat energy to communicate the idea that we're all connected across scales. So this was our concept statement. So we put together a visual language informed by a thermal imaging palette called Arnbo to connect all of the creative materials across media. Hired a thermal imaging camera, and Nicola set about capturing the surrounding environment across scales. I don't know how. I can't play this all of a sudden. I just go over to green.
If there's sound on that, Claire,
Yeah,
we might need to.
there's no sound actually.
Okay.
That one. Here we go. I can just.
Sound hasn't been sent through Zoom.
Oh, there we go. So you can see it moving now. This imagery was used to create exhibition marketing materials across digital and print. And here are some examples of the marketing materials outside the gallery. And then inside, this language followed through. We used thermal noise patterns to create backdrops to layer behind and ground the artworks. And we coated exhibition furniture with thermochromic lacquer that would change colour when visitors made contact with it. Here's the design approach applied in the exhibition space. So the idea was that when you view this artwork sitting on the chair, by the time you get up to walk away, your body heat will have transformed its colour from purple to neon pink. This heat responsive colour changing furniture shows how every action has an impact, whether intentional or not. It enables visitors to experience the narrative in an embodied way, which we feel is a really powerful way to communicate narrative. You can see some of the digital design being used in the space, showing how this project allowed us to build a transmedial narrative environment. It's good to note that different projects afford different opportunities in terms of narrative layering and spatial storytelling. So then how do you approach a multi-layered narrative environment? I'd like to take you through another project to explore this question. The exhibition Seamus Heaney, Listen Now Again, which opened in 2018 and is still open to visit until 2027 at the Bank of Ireland Cultural and Heritage Centre in Parliament House on College Green in Dublin. This is a framing diagram where every ring represents a narrative layer. So the framing narrative in this case is Parliament House, which sits in the outer ring and sets the stage for the central story it contains. For Heaney, sitting within this narrative frame implies a status fitting of a national treasure, and that narrative is communicated implicitly rather than explicitly via the frame. We had a wonderful team on this project, which was with RAA, Ralph Applebaum Associates. RAA, for anyone who's not familiar, are the world's largest practice dedicated to the planning and design of museums and narrative environments. I've worked with this studio on many projects over the years, starting there as an intern in the late 2000s. So I have a long relationship with RAA and always really enjoy working with them. And we also had a wider creative team as well. So you can see by this that the design of narrative environments is extremely multidisciplinary and collaborative. The exhibition itself was a series of firsts. It was the first public display of Seamus Heaney's archive, the first off-site exhibition developed by National Library of Ireland, the inaugural exhibition at the Bank of Ireland Cultural and Heritage Centre. It was a new cultural venue for Dublin at the time. Exhibition concept, From Earth to Air, takes visitors on a journey through the elements to explore Heaney's life and work. This image, which is known as a napkin sketch in the architecture and spatial design worlds, was created by the now RAA director John Blanchard to communicate this concept just in one image. The first task was to build out the story from this concept and develop the flow of the visitor journey. team developed a narrative diagram. It shows the main visitor flow sequencing through various chapters, exactly like you'd have in a book. And we married the four elements thematically within the main exhibition chapters: excavations, creativity, conscience, and marbles. And once we had our narrative diagram in place, next started to map the story to the space to understand how the experience would unfold for the visitor as they move through the building. This diagram shows how the narrative maps onto the space. The red dotted line shows the flow of the visitor journey. A challenge from the architectural side was that the exhibition space had to be set back within the building. Visitors would have to pass through a series of spaces before reaching the start of the exhibition. Arriving in Parliament House, which is such a loaded narrative environment in and of itself, meant that the narrative frame had to be addressed in some way in order to acknowledge the significance of the building. In the foyer, as visitors arrived, we added building interpretation, which people could read before entering the pre-experience in the rotunda. Pre-experience was a retrospective of Healy's publications over the years, so that anyone who was unfamiliar with who Healy was could understand this is an important poet and see the breadth of his output as well before entering the exhibition. Visitors then encountered a new space containing an art installation from Irish artist Mazer, showing a series of birds suspended in the space taking flight, which was a metaphor for the overall exhibition concept, from earth to air, enforcing this key idea both on the way in and again upon the exit. The exhibition started in earnest with the prologue, setting out the story, starting with the poem Digging, stating Healy's commitment to writing as a profession. And then as the visitor enters the exhibition, they're guided in by an overview timeline of events, showing what they're about to experience, a kind of preview of the main exhibition space. Visitors then cross the threshold into Earth and the journey through the chapters begins. Experience completes with the epilogue, which is a moment for the visitors to respond with their voice. It's a kind of pass the mic moment in the experience. And the Irish landscape, which was a great source of inspiration for Healy, is grounding the whole story within the gallery. So we commissioned a series of photographs from Irish photographer Richie Stokes. He retraced Healy's steps across Ireland and photographed the places that Healy loved and brought them into the gallery for visitors to experience. Next step was to develop a design language for the environment that expressed this journey from earth to air. One key principle that guided the design was to set a consistent horizon line in the space that would be seen throughout the landscapes that line the exhibition walls. So the photographer Richie was briefed to set the horizon line in the exact same position in each photograph, regardless of the landscape, so that this rule would be fixed in the space. That rule then informed the placement of all other setworks, which were seen in relation to this consistent horizon line. Doing this allowed us to make the environment more immersive and bring the outside in to what was essentially a black box experience. Here are some early concept sketches showing how the design language develops as you move through the elements. The earth setworks are informed by the landscape, particularly the bog, which so inspired Healy. And exhibition elements are kind of set into the ground as the type of display method. In fire, then setworks start to animate a little bit. The mutable energy of fire comes into how objects are displayed. They become more airborne, the palette becomes warmer. In water, setworks and displays appear to float and weightlessness starts to come in as a language. Finally, in air, setworks take flight and lift off the ground. Showcases don't touch the floor. There's video above your head and so forth. These design principles went into the writing of the AV media briefs so that AV media designers know-how were able to reflect these across the design of the digital materials as well, creating cohesion then across the physical and the digital environments. The concept that guides the visitor journey from earth to air, it also taps into other archetypal narratives such as from unknown to known, from local to global, and from the ordinary to the extraordinary. All of these narrative layers stack up one on top of each other, making the narrative experience richer and more robust and multi-layered. So here are a few images of the final result. This is an example of the design language from Earth, showing a screen set into the floor, revealing a body preserved in a bog. The screen acts as a portal in space and time, allowing us to travel through the layers below the Earth to uncover the inspiration behind Healy's poetry. You can see lots of elements working together here in the environment to deliver the narrative. Alongside displayed items from Healy's archive, we had things like real turf in the gallery space and source props that appeared in the poems that international visitors may not be familiar with to help with their interpretation. And we told the story through ambient and localized audio, as well as through text, photography, film, interactive media, and lighting. You can see an example of one of the landscapes line the exhibition and how the one-to-one perspective creates that human scale in space. Healy's voice also guides the experience, creating an intimacy and a feeling of direct sharing between Healy, the protagonist, and the visitor. So we very much wanted the experience to feel grounded, like Healy, and we use the language of assembly to inform how we put together exhibition elements inspired by his way of working with what is around him to create. You see this philosophy embodied in how he assembled his own writing desk, which you can see on the left. It's made from 2 sets of drawers with a piece of wood on top. We aim to reflect that same resourceful spirit in the exhibition language. In Fire, you can see Healy's desk again, accompanied by a film that delves into his creative process and how he wrote, using the forge as the key poem that grounds the narrative in this area, a metaphor for his creative process. Also an interactive touchscreen where you can explore his diaries in detail and gain insights into his process, daily life, and inspirations. In Water, you see how set works start to float using mirror at the base of showcases and furniture to give them a weightlessness. And narratively, this section deals with Healy's growing international profile, his relationship with politics, and the Nobel Prize for Literature, which he was awarded in 1995. You can see how we used Healy's words to invite visitors to take a break by the seating area on the right. The quote reads, "Pause, take heed, breathe, just breathe." Here, Healy's words are guiding the pace of the exhibition. Finally, in Air, we see the stratospheric success Healy achieved within his life. And this is the section where we needed to contend with his passing. And this was very sensitive due to the connection people feel with the poet and the fact that his family survived him and were very much involved in the project. So after much discussion, we decided that film was the best medium to choose to speak about his passing, which was told through his last words that he texted to his beloved wife, Mary, appearing on the screen as you would kind of write a text, Noli Timere, which is Latin for do not be afraid or be not afraid, followed by a moment of silence, and then the sound of people cheering and clapping for him in Croke Park, honouring his memory and footage from that powerful event shown on the screen. There's a moment then of vox pops of people talking about the impact of his life and work, and the emotional arc of the experience starts to come back up again. The exhibition ends with the epilogue, which is a conversation initiated by Meza, who, inspired by Seamus Heaney's last words, had painted a mural on a wall in Dublin too, to share these words as a message to the people of Dublin. And in the same way that Heaney influenced Meza, this platform invites messages about how Heaney impacted other people's lives, and incredible messages appeared. The unexpected outcome for this exhibition was that people were so moved by the experience that some of the exhibition staff found themselves needing to buy in boxes of Kleenex to deal with some tearful visitors at the end of the experience. And personally, I'm really grateful to have been able to work on this project and feel our team took it on with the correct level of responsibility it required and gave the appropriate importance to all of the multiple narrative layers which are part of this story. So you can see again from this project how narrative environments are inherently collaborative and rely on multidisciplinary teams, each bringing their own expertise to achieve the overall vision. And even then, there's no success if the reception is poor, if the experience doesn't land or connect with people. Reception theory plays into the design of narrative environments. And ideas around reception were developed by literary theorists Hans Robert Jauss and Wolfgang Iser in the 1960s and 70s. And reception theory argues that meaning does not reside solely in the work. It emerges in the encounter between work and audience. Reception depends on many factors, including cultural background, expectations, emotional state, and other contextual factors. So these different things are reasons why we can't fully predict how people will experience things. We can, however, design for different types of visitors. So in the museum world, we call these groups streakers, strollers, and studiers, or divers as well. So Professor Tim McNeill, in his book, The Exhibition and Experience Design Handbook, describes these as follows. Streakers are people who crave a few highlights. Strollers are those who diligently follow the intended narrative, and studiers scrutinize every detail. He does note that in studies, most visitors display all three behaviours at some point in their experience. However, I find this model is a really useful way to think about how to design for visitors so that no matter which category they may fall into, the design will meet them there. Moving on to the scale of a building. This is Hayloft Point, a major new mixed-use development in East London that opened in 2022, comprising student accommodation, workspace, and a community space which is now occupied by Streets of Growth, who are a local youth charity. During site investigations, the remains of a late 16th century Tudor-era playhouse called the Boar's Head was found. And this was the most significant archaeological find during the Developer Unite Students' 30 years of building properties. And of course, this placed the site under the protection of Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act in the UK, meaning that the site had cultural value and steps must be taken to preserve that heritage. Studio Fido were invited onto this project by architects Manilow and White to help tell the site's story, collaborate on the interpretive design aspects, and contribute to the project from a narrative environments perspective. What was fascinating about this project was that the brief was extremely open, which is unusual. This provided a unique opportunity to steer the narrative of this site. So our work was mainly focused on the ground floor and lower levels of the building, which houses, amongst meeting rooms and interpretive displays, a performance and exhibition space to promote the site's history. I don't know if anyone notices anything else about the team, but it's entirely female team. And this is very unusual for a construction project. We all remarked how unique that was and what an opportunity this project was to foreground the stories of the women who contributed to the success of the Boar's Head, whose stories only happened to be recorded in relation to the men in their lives, as that was the prevailing culture of that time. So we felt their stories were at risk of being forgotten and felt their stories were worth telling. So the three women we foregrounded were Mary Phillips, Jane Poley, and Queen Anne of Denmark. All women involved in the playhouse in different ways, from Mary Phillips, who worked there as a gatherer, taking payments from patrons as they entered the playhouse, to Jane Poley, running it as a widow of the former owner John Transfield, and Queen Anne, being a patron of the Boar's Head, known due to her status as queen. So we decided to place the women on the windows of the performance space, making them as visible today as they would have been in the community when they were alive, and contributing to life at the Boar's Head Playhouse. These women also represented different parts of society, from Queen Anne, who was nobility, to the rising middle class in Jane Poley, and the working class in Mary Phillips. At the time, not one of these women, even the Queen, would have been able to publicly express their involvement in the playhouse. So it's interesting that they're all displayed in visual parity with one another. The curator, Jackie Healy, was also keen that we present all aspects of material culture that form the history of the site. Among Roman artifacts and a dog's paw print from the 16th century, a plastic toy of the Hulk from 2003 was included in one of the displays. There's a thread running through this project challenging what is worthy of being put on public display, and this made it quite an exciting project to work on. Interpretive elements appeared throughout the building, telling the story of the boar's head. Here is an illustration by Irish designer Kate Brangan, created for us at Fado. All of these graphic elements were screen printed directly to the walls with metallic inks for maximum integration with the architecture. Showcase displays showed artifacts uncovered in the archaeological dig all around the building, alongside interpretation. And the story also appeared in meeting rooms, displayed on walls so that people who, let's say, arrive early for a meeting, they can learn about the context of where they are. The story of the site was told in different ways, across different media and different spaces within the building. This is the performance/exhibition space where the architect Lauren Lee Porter referenced the site's past by using theatrical curtains to conceal the space from outside view for private events and also to provide light control. So we created some hard-wearing floor vinyls which mark the footprint of the playhouse across time as this added layer of site interpretation. And we also did the same outside, so the lines would follow through from inside to outside, using brass inserts to mark the site footprint. Then above the performance space, we provided diagrams of the playhouse's past layout, so visitors could reference this while looking out from a balcony. Included a narrative Easter egg for visitors to discover, brass inserts that represented dropped playbills for plays that actually took place at the site in the past were set into the pavement outside the building. Through all of these narrative interventions, we wanted to pique interest in the history of the site and to deliver the message to audiences that this is not a regular high-rise building in East London. This is a place with a remarkable and layered history. We have a chapter actually in a new book coming out from Routledge at the end of this year, where our team will discuss the process of creating this project. Here's the cover image. The book is called The Transformative Power of Exhibition and Experience Design, and the authors are Timothy McNeil and Tricia Austin. Our chapter is called Unearthing Unheard Stories, Transforming Historical Narratives by Foregrounding Stories of the Lives of Women in Cultural Placemaking Projects. So if you're interested in reading more about this project and how narrative environments can transform, do take a look at it when it comes out. And the final project I'll show today is at the scale of an urban quarter. The project is Cooper's Cross, located in Dublin 1. It's a 6-acre mixed-use development bordered by New Wapping Street, Sheriff Street, Mare Street Upper, and Castle Forbes Road. It's set back 1 block from the River Liffey in Dublin's North Docks. My role on the project was Head of Cultural Strategy for Cooper's Cross, working as part of the in-house team of Kennedy Wilson. And the brief was to lead on all things culture, from setting the cultural vision to developing public installations and programming, to creating public engagement strategies and strategic partnerships, and also to set up a 10,000 square foot cultural space at the heart of the site. The places are filled with multiple stakeholders with different objectives, and the real challenge for a project like this is to consider all place stakeholders and provide an anchorage through a unifying vision that everyone can get on board with. That vision must be authentic to the place, and the narrative must be plural and inclusive so everyone can see themselves in it. So co-creation was central to the strategic approach across all cultural activity, and rather than seeking to control every element, it was about setting a direction and inviting others to take ownership of different aspects of how the space is realised and performed. So where do you start in discovering the essence of a place? The first months of the project, I worked with the Place Bureau to do a research study and create a cultural strategy for the development. We looked across people, place and story to uncover insights into the site, and I conducted a number of interviews with cultural influencers, community anchors, and key stakeholders in the area to quickly get to terms with the place and to identify the needs in terms of cultural infrastructure. And to uncover the timeless threads within the site's history, we looked at what themes pop up again and again throughout the site's life story that still remain true today, and found that Cooper's Cross has always been a place of manufacture and work, ground-up initiative and creativity, resilient community, and transience and change due to its proximity to the River Liffey. It also developed a place personality, tone of voice, narrative approach, and curatorial principles that guided all cultural work. I'm just going to speak briefly about 3 of the public realm projects. Cooper's Cross, starting with the sensory playground at Sean O'Casey Park. Also going to show the interpretive timeline installation at Dockland's Story, which runs along a public walkway leading towards Sean O'Casey Park. And the cultural space at the heart of the site, the International Centre for the Image. So starting with the playground at Sean O'Casey Park. In my role, I brought the decorators on board to lead the design. They are socially engaged designers of narrative environments, and this was their first project built in Ireland. Design was led by Chavi Larchfont, who's a long-time trusted colleague of mine who shares similar training and a research-led narrative approach to projects. We also asked Sinead Burke from Tilting the Lens to support us in leading our focus groups in order to engage local audiences in the design process. This is a photograph of the playground and the basketball court at the stands today. And here's a quote from Chavi about the design process. So there was an urgent need for accessible play spaces within the area. The playwright Sean O'Casey, who had lived 5 minutes from the site, had lived with a visual impairment all of his life. So there was a narrative link there that the decorators picked up on and used as inspiration for the sensory playground, ensuring that it provided a range of play opportunities for differently abled users and that there was something there for everyone to enjoy. Moving on to the next public realm project, A Dockland's Story. This is a 60-metre long interpretive copper timeline telling the story of the site from Mesolithic times to today. The piece runs along this walkway overlooking the cultural space and can again be read in both directions, from past to present or from present to past. Core team on the project included myself, Eamon O'Sullivan of Anchor Studio, Jackie Keeley, who you'll remember from the Boar's Head project, and Steve Dugan. So taking a hyper-local approach, Jackie researched and discovered many potential stories that the team then with Jackie reviewed, choosing the stories that felt most important to include would serve the illustrations well and related to the timeless themes we spoke about earlier. Lost my mouse. If I do.
No, it's there.
Yeah, you got it. There we go. Excellent. Thank you. Get the hang of it eventually. Okay, so then what happened was Jackie wrote 50-word micro-narratives pitched at a general audience, and Steve created custom illustrations for each story. The stories were also available in Braille in the dark strip below the panels. This is a video that Eamon took walking along the timeline. I think it's really helpful to understand the scale of the piece. All of these stories were supported by quotes, lyrics, and extracts from literature, songs, poems, and historical accounts from the area that helped to bring the stories to life. Local historians Hugo McGuinness and Joe Mooney from East Wall History Group kindly acted as our peer reviewers, helping us to tell the story of the area accurately and also providing valuable pointers. And Declan P. Byrne from the Dublin Dock Workers Preservation Society also contributed research to this piece, so it was a real collective effort. And then Eamon, with his graphic design expertise, pulled everything together through a cohesive design, ensuring legibility and universal design principles were met. That's the whole thing. So here's a quote about the process from Jackie Keely. Jackie was really tenacious as a researcher and digging deep and finding these really hyper local stories that reflected the true nature of the place. Jackie and Steve, the illustrator, they worked really closely together to ensure that the illustrations were true to the time, the place, and to people's likeness, considering everything from like the clothes they were wearing to the environments they were inhabiting in the illustrations. And we all found it like such a pleasure to work on this project and feel it's a wonderful contribution to the city from Kennedy Wilson. There's nothing else like that exists around there. And finally, I'd like to just speak a little bit about the cultural space. International Centre for the Image opened in July 2025, which is operated by Photo Ireland with support from Kennedy Wilson and the Arts Council of Ireland. So when tasked with procuring a suitable cultural tenant, there were many factors that informed that process, but key was the cultural relevance of that tenant to the site's history in terms of art form and also place personality. Incredibly influential people have come from that area, including the playwright Sean O'Casey, and over time it's come to be associated with a lot of live art forms such as street photography, theatre, music and film. From Luke Kelly from the Dubliners, growing up there, to film and documentary maker Jim Sheridan, who grew up on Abercorn Road in Seville Place and shot In the Name of the Father and the Boxer there. I was lucky to have had the chance to meet Jim Sheridan to ask for a quote for a Dublin story. A lovely chat about the area, and this is what he said. And I thought it was beautiful. We included it on the timeline. So the cultural centre needs to relate to an art form associated with the area. It couldn't be something that was pulled out from the sky. The area has a strong association with image making, from film to street photography, from Colin Pierce's photographs of the area to photographer Paul Kelly's North Wall series that celebrates local culture and reveals the uniqueness of the place with great beauty. And Paul very kindly gifted me a copy of this image, which I treasured, like having got to know him well through collaborating on the project. It captures a local ritual where the children jump off bridges into the River Liffey. The background, you can see some people on the top of the old bridge in the distance. There's a really nice connection between old and new and this tradition that persists. And currently, Eamon Doyle, also well known for his Dublin street photography, has a show at the International Centre for the Image with Niall Sweeney and David Donahue called As If. It was developed on the site and is running through to the 5th of April. There's still a chance to see it. And you can see how this legacy of what the place is all about is carrying on through the work of Photo Ireland at Cooper's Cross. So the International Centre for the Image very much encourages the next generation to come up through various ground-up initiatives, providing a really valuable function for the area and also more widely. It provides the area and the city with an exhibition space, an art bookshop and library, an atelier with a workshop and artist studios, and a public program of events that is always really exciting and speaks to the risk-taking and daring personality of the area. The title as well, International Centre for the Image, is open to wherever image making may take us into the future. And I'm personally so impressed with how this new cultural space has put Cooper's Cross on the map for all the right reasons. A quote from Angel, Photo Ireland's director, to close off. And on a personal note, it was obviously an incredible opportunity to be part of the establishment of this new cultural space and the creation of the partnership. And I think just it's very important to say that key to the success of the project were the really inspiring and visionary people on all sides who believed in the importance of culture in creating world-class experiences. So we've been on a journey looking at different types of narrative environments across scales. I hope you found it interesting. We've seen how narrative environments are really about designing how stories are experienced in space, how, whether that's within an installation, a gallery, a building, or across an urban district, the same fundamental elements are at play: people, place, and story. And what continues to interest me about designing narrative environments is that the tools and techniques used to create them can translate across many different contexts, from immersive experiences to cultural placemaking. So thanks very much, everyone, for listening, and for those here in person for braving the rain. It's very much appreciated, and to do it myself is wonderful to be here as well at the Centre for Creative Technologies. Really happy to take any questions if anyone has any.
Questions, but I have to go. But yeah, so fantastic. Beautiful. As a geographer, I find it really heartening to see people in place actually reflecting.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry to go. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, all right.
Be in touch again.
Yeah. Feel free to contact us.
Questions?
Yeah.
So, at the very start, you mentioned narrative environments. What was the name of that author?
Oh, Trisha Austin.
Trisha Austin.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, the establishment of a cultural space that's massive in terms of funding, but like to understand the way in which public allowed you to do that. Was it a predominantly an Arts Council funded piece of work, or you enter into the piece of work, do research, and then in your different stakeholders in order to establish and fund something like that? Or
It was the latter.
really?
Yeah, so it was an initiative driven by Kennedy Wilson. They're a very progressive developer. They understand the importance of culture and placemaking, and they wanted to do that. And then it was a case of trying to understand what's going to work, because not everything would work, like for the area, but also for the space that we had as well. Certain things it couldn't be through the allowances and affordances. But that was something that needed to be looked at, as well as what was an appropriate art form. Was really like, I had to kind of look at what was existing there already and true to the place. It would have been a shame to just pull something random in, like a spaceship landing there. It was much better if it was an art form that exists, you know. And then it was a case of how could this be funded, which came once it was all defined. And
So you're doing the predominant kind of work first, then be able to justify the funding.
you need to know what it is you're presenting, and that it's going to work, and what it's going to look like. All of that before going and asking, because people will just say, well, let's see what it is, come back late. You know what I mean? So yeah, no, I think it was an incredible to have been achieved, and not too many projects.
No, that's massive. Yeah. Who funded it? Sorry to.
So Kennedy Wilson gave significant support, as did the Arts Council.
Arts Council.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen anything as regards youth in an indoor space? Because quite often it's playground, but have you ever seen like that happen in any of your projects for children and young people in terms of sport? Or
Yeah, I see. Related to your PhD, why you're asking that? Not in my projects. But yeah, I'll have a think about that. I will send you on. No, because I'm sure there's some interesting case studies. Yeah. Thank you.
You were talking about reception theory. I'm sorry, I missed the names.
All right. So JAUSS.
Yes.
JAUSS. And I need to remind myself. And with Ari. Iser, I think. Let's check. You're now experiencing it backwards. Does it change how you feel about it? I think it's JAUSS and Iser. I think it was. Oh, is it here?
What, yeah, there.
Ah, yes, Joust and Iser. So it's Hans Robert Joust and Wolfgang Iser. And Joust is Jauss.
Also, it's amazing the work you did in the neighborhood and taking all this knowledge from the people and local historians, etc. This is something I've seen a lot in Barcelona, where I'm from, and all that, but something that looks like it's just starting here in Ireland.
Yeah.
So it would be okay to say that I have the perception that the idea of architecture in the space, urban space, etc., is kind of shifting towards this idea that it's the community who has to somehow participate and sign through their experiences, a story, and all that. It's something new.
Yeah, I feel the same, very
Okay.
much so. And I don't know if you know, but like I've just moved back to Ireland. Like I've been here about a year now, and I was in London for 20 years before that. I basically left to study and just didn't come back, and having too much fun. And yeah, I definitely saw a lot more in terms of like cultural placemaking and community engagement, and yeah, in the creation of place than I have seen here in Ireland, though I have seen some really nice examples as of late. And I think Wilton Park by iPut, there's some other developers who are thinking about how story can contribute to the spaces that we live in. And obviously Kennedy Wilson are very good at it. And yeah, I think there's other developers as well who might have a very good community focus and understand that sense of belonging, something that must be supported, and you need to have that in order to feel comfortable in space. So yeah, I do agree, and yeah, I think there are other cities which there's amazing examples, and yes, Barcelona, and I have been to Barcelona, and I would agree it's excellent. There's a real sense of place. There's lots of different interesting projects going on, and in London the same. And yeah, I think it probably is quite nascent in Ireland. I hope we'll see more of it. I think we just need a few valuable case studies to point to say, remember when this was done, remember when this was done. Okay, see the value, and maybe more of this will happen in the future. I hope so.
Question from somebody online here. Is wondering how you apply the concept or methodology of immersive theatre to exhibition curation and spatial design.
They're kind of two different things. I'd say that they're different formats, but there's definitely things you can borrow. For example, when I used to work for Punch Drunk, and one of the rules is anything you can touch needs to touch real. So if it's wood, it needs to feel like wood. If it's, something that looks like marble, it has to be cold to the touch. It has to feel that. If it's up high, far away, you can't touch it or get up close to it. You can be a little bit more free with what that materiality is. That would be one thing. Certainly, like I think with the Healy one, because we talked about that today in detail, like there's ambient audio as well as localized audio, things that build atmosphere. Just using all of the different senses, I suppose, would be one. In terms of how the story is told, yes, there are like techniques you can use that make things feel more intimate. Like even we spoke about Healy's voice being used to guide you through the exhibition. So his presence is felt. He feels like he's there with you. And that would be something I'd say which would probably borrow from that kind of world. But I do think the formats are quite different. The timings are different. the control over the space is different. Yeah, the type of things you can do. I love immersive theatre. Like it's so much fun for this stuff, and you can really experiment and push it. You have different restrictions in an exhibition design format, but definitely you can borrow some tools and techniques from that world to make it more immersive and just a bit more creative in the way the story's being told. Yeah.
Some of the other online, they're not questions. Masterclass so far. Thanks. Really excellent, informative, exciting session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thanks to everyone online. I can't see you, thank God, because I think I was there. But yeah, I really appreciate you showing up. And yeah, if anyone wants to get in touch, I'll just leave you with the final slide, which has some details. I'm very happy to continue talking if this resonated. And thanks, David.
Thanks very much, Claire. That was fantastic.
Thank you.